Hi, Jerome.
Hey there. Blessings, brother. Blessings,
Well,
blessings. Thank you for joining us today, Bryan.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, it's a wonderful time. I'm glad that you agreed, just for the invitation to have a conversation about, these forms of raising vibration and really just, recoding the body. I titled this Recoding the Breath with Bryan because I'd love to learn more about your journey, just more about you as an individual, more about you just in your lifestyle. So, yeah, just where are you in the world actually?
That's what I always say to people. Where are you in the world? I'm in Manhattan, New York City.
Manhattan. My mom was born there.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's not very common to be born on Manhattan.
Yeah, she was born in Manhattan. Yeah. So I was born in Germany. Both of my parents are retired
Oh,
military, but
cool.
she was born in Manhattan.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Where are you now?
Currently I'm in Texas,
Okay,
so I'm in between Austin and San Antonio. Yeah.
nice. That's great.
Yeah.
Nice and warm.
So in the city over there. Wow, it's interesting when if somebody knew nothing about you, Bryan, how would you describe yourself?
A happy person who wasn't always a happy person, but who learned to deal with his struggles and raise his consciousness to the best of his ability to get to a state of feeling grateful
Mm,
for everything and trying to live in a state of grace and not harming anybody. And now my purpose is to help other people, to help them breathe better, to help heal their brains, so they can feel better on a daily basis. And it's gradual, but it's really powerful.
absolutely, absolutely. So I love that, gratitude and grace,
Mm.
to be grateful and to be graceful, with yourself. It's it's one of the best things we can do for our own mental health, for sure. When you said that, a happy person who didn't used to be a happy person, what was it like during those times when you were down? Like, was it bouts of depression? What was it that you feel like you didn't used to have that?
So I would never consider myself a depressed person,
Mhm.
but I would have considered myself very anxious and stressed since the time I was born.
Okay.
Because I was born in 1969 and everybody smoked. Women who were pregnant smoked. So my mom smoked, her mom smoked. So I was pretty much born in a fight or flight response because I was born dirty, because I was inhaling carcinogens the entire time I was being developed. And my dad is 6 feet tall, and I'm literally 5'5". My mom was 5'1". So I don't think I ever really grew because of that. And then in the 70s in the Bronx, New York City, we were bankrupt. So this living in the city was not a very nice place to be. But I had a great childhood, except for when I went home, because behind closed doors, my mom was not a very good mother. Let's just put it that way. And I've had I have an acupuncturist, and the first time I ever met him, he said, long story short, he confirmed that people like me, with the state of their kidneys and their liver, don't live very long lives. And he said, this started when you were a child. And I said, you can see that? And he said, yes. He can see the stress in your tongue and he can listen to the pulses of your hands, your liver, your kidneys, and your heart. So um, for 45 years, I would say I lived under tremendous amounts of stress. Because even in my happy times, I was a wrestler. And even though I was doing what I loved, wrestling is a very stressful sport. And you're being choked all the time, you're being suffocated all the time, you're being thrown all the time,
Mm.
you're banging heads all the
Yeah.
time. And all of that is not good for you. And wrestlers out there, probably no wrestlers might see this, but if they watch this, they would immediately be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But yet I do, because I wrestled for 30 years and I know what the cumulative effects did to me, did to my nervous system. Because it took me 5 years of continuous acupuncture. We're talking about weekly. That's 52 sessions a year. It took 5 years till my acupuncturist told me that I didn't have adrenal fatigue anymore.
Wow.
Because for 40 years, whatever it was, 45 years, whatever it was, I was under a fight or flight. I lived in a state of fight or flight.
Okay.
And you could be here right now, not being chased by a tiger or angry or stressed, but your nervous system is unregulated. I don't like to say upregulated, downregulated. It's just not regulated.
Right.
Because there is only balance. There is only yin and yang. So I wasn't balanced my entire life. And when you're in balance, you seek out things that are adrenaline seeking. Some people do. I did. So I was an adrenaline seeker my entire life. And, you know, being a athlete, competitive athlete, you were taught to eat a lot of protein. So I stuffed as much meat in my body as I could. And that contributed to my kidney dysfunction and my liver dysfunction and my bowel obstructions. But again, nobody wants to hear that. They don't want to hear that.
Right.
They don't want to hear that when you eat flesh, you will eat parasites, because parasites live in flesh. Human beings have parasites, and parasites can actually be good for you, right? They actually eat the fecal matter. They eat the stuff that's in your body. That's their food. So in gut biome, you know, you're supposed to have 51% good bacteria and 49% of the stuff that, you know, you can control that 49%. So we all have it living inside of us. It's not like you want to rid yourself of parasites, but if you think of a body that decomposes, what happens to a body when it decomposes? Maggots. There's maggots, right? They don't come from the ground. They're inside of you. And then they eat the dead flesh on the way out.
Oh, Jesus.
Right? So it's important for me. I mean, I haven't eaten flesh now in 12 straight years, and I started giving it up 13 years ago, and I have plenty of muscle. I'm 25 pounds lighter than I used to be, and I don't want to be big, but I have plenty of muscle. You don't, you know, but everybody's more of an aesthetic. They think of it in terms of aesthetics, and I don't really care about that anymore. Thankfully, God gifted me a body. I've always looked like this. So if I take care of it, I'm always going to look like this, and I don't need flesh to do it.
Right.
You know, and I wouldn't. And first, I stopped eating flesh for my own health, because when I passed gas or I went to the bathroom, you did not want to be around me. I mean, it was horrendous. My body odor was terrible, right? And that's the putrefaction of the desiccated flesh that's rotting in your intestines. But nobody wants to hear that.
Right.
You know, they just don't. They don't want to hear it, and if they do want to hear it, they won't listen to it.
Yeah.
Right. And then those parasites are what's living inside of them, and it keeps telling them, "Oh, eat! I need my food. I need my food." And that's why it took me a year to get off of it.
Right.
And then once I really got off of it, then it really hit me that I should not be causing harm to sentient beings. Right. And now, thankfully, 12 years later, I never would.
Yeah.
Right. I never will. And I'll never go back to it. I know there's a lot. People say, oh, there's so many vegans online that go back to meat. I'm like, that's not true. You can't compare. You don't know how many people are getting off meat at the same time some of those vegans decide maybe they want to go back. And just because one person who's got 60,000 followers does it and talks about how good they feel doesn't mean it's good for you, because it's stimulating. And when you're stimulated, you have all this energy, and you're aggressive, and you're not calm and centered. And then they start to tell about how much better they feel. They're not emaciated anymore. Well, I'm not emaciated. I'm not emaciated, and I'm able to wrestle with 20-year-olds, and I'm 55, and I can run like the wind. I can exercise, I'm flexible, I feel great, and I feel centered, and I feel calm,
Hmm.
and I feel better than I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just getting off flesh and going vegan and now I'm raw, but it was more about
Yeah.
breathing. Because once I started breathing, I was really, really bad off. I was basically dying. That's what the acupuncturist told me. I felt as if I was dying. I couldn't breathe.
Mm.
And then once I started breathing, it took about, I remember exactly, it was 15 months in. And somehow, as fate would have it, I started to find Dr. Sebi.
Hmm.
And I started to overdose on Dr. Sebi videos. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I pride myself on being a critical thinker.
Hmm.
I can think rationally. And this guy's telling me something different. And I'm not going to go, whoa, maybe 10 years ago, before that I would have, but I wouldn't have been watching him. So I started to watch him and I started to listen to him and about all the healings and the way he talked. And I said, this is for me
Mm.
because I'm experiencing all these bad things. And then he got killed.
Right.
It wasn't that long after I started paying attention to him that he was taken out. And he was taken out. And then I found Dr. Morse, Dr. Robert Morse. And I OD'd on Dr. Morse videos. And I said, if fruit is this powerful and it can help you heal your body, not that it heals your body, because here's another misinformation is that fruit does not make you alkaline. Fruit is in an alkaline state. So if I eat it, all I'm doing is making sure that my gut pH stays where it should be, which is acid. So I'm not putting in acid forming foods. My breath is what creates alkalinity in my body because that's chemistry. Food is not chemistry. Fruit is something that's non-toxic, non-congestive, and non-mucus forming, right? Even fruit, you're going to make a little bit of mucus because anytime the body has to digest an outside substance, it has to create some form of mucus. And as you and I talked, we are breatharian in nature. We're actually not designed to eat. Do any of the major organs in Chinese medicine have to do with digestion? No. No. So when the human being at some point on Earth, as the climate shifted, because it shifts, it's not warming, it's not changing, it's shifting all the time. So as the human being had to move into different areas of the Earth, they had to adapt to whatever food was available. And then if you read the book Return to the Brain of Eden, do you know that book?
No, I need to read that one. Yeah.
Oh my. Return to the Brain of Eden, I think, is the best book I've ever read in my life.
Okay.
And it's about fruit. It's about testosterone.
Hmm.
So I'm actually trying to suppress my testosterone. Not that I want my testosterone levels to be low, but I want my free testosterone to be more bound because it makes me more of a less aggressive person and it allows my brain to continue to grow.
Okay.
Whereas proteins stop your brain from growing. And if you go on Google Scholar and you type in size of the brain, you'll see that the brain has actually been shrinking for the last 10,000 years.
Wow.
So everyone says, we grew a bigger brain because we ate meat, we were chewing. Weston Price says, oh, we were chewing. So all the people that he studied in West Africa or wherever they were, but they were living on the earth. They were praying to their food. Yeah, they lived to 100. They had great jaws. They had good breathing, and they ate meat, but they only lived to 100. I think we can live a lot longer, and if we were breatharian, I think we would live indefinitely because we would be putting nothing congestive in our bodies, and then we would be living on pranic light and energy. So there's another good book. Have you heard of Man's Higher
Yes,
Consciousness?
I have it right over here. Yeah.
That's the second best book. It's just under Return to the
Yeah.
Brain of Eden.
Yeah. Hilton Hotima. Yeah.
And he can describe scientifically what breatharianism is. and that you don't get any nutrition from food. Nothing. Zero. All of it comes from the sun and the air. You don't get nutrition at all from food. So, you know, that's, I don't want to continue. You can.
No, this is amazing. This is beautiful. You know, I just was like really just absorbing. I was really digesting your words, and really this is nourishing, you know, just to hear your perspective that you've adopted and that you've had so many trials and so many adversity and faced so many obstacles, and you've overcome these things step by step, like from, you know, your liver malfunctioning, your kidneys malfunctioning, your adrenal glands shot, and then turning to TCM, you know, traditional Chinese medicine for acupuncture. And 5 years, it took 5 years for it to come back into homeostasis and back into balance to find that equilibrium. And I mean, it's amazing, you know, just amazing how the doctors and people were saying that, you know, with these kinds of problems, people don't live very long, or people don't go very long, and you've been able to
Reverse,
you know, overcome all of that, reverse all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, my acupuncturist now tells me, who I just saw yesterday, he says to me, what you've done with your organs is nothing short of remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. I didn't know was possible. That's how much I've changed. And there's still more to go. Because if this is apex health for your organs, I was down here. He says, and now you're here. But he says, it's like running the 100 meters. How much faster can you get? So if you're here, it takes a lot more work. You got to do more cleansing, more healing, more herbs in order to get up to that level. And that level for me would be, I don't want to call it enlightenment, but I want to call it living in a state of grace. It's just increased state of grace that you feel. And enlightenment doesn't mean that you turn into the Buddha, because the Buddha said before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The Buddha still, he was 35 when he turned, you know, when he became awake, and he lived to be 84. And people are like, well, why did the Buddha die at 84? Like, well, he didn't die because there's no such thing as death. He transitioned. If he was in control of the earth and of the realms and the consciousness, and he chose to move on to a different dimension because there was more work to do in the higher dimensions. Right?
I've heard people say the same about like Paramahansa Yogananda, you know, like choosing to transition, you know, choosing to move on. Yeah.
His body was out in the open air in Southern California, because that's where he passed away. And he was in a casket so people could come and pray for 2 weeks in an open air casket, and he was passed, and his body didn't decay.
Wow. Wow.
The balloons.
Yeah. That's crazy. Wow.
I mean, that's a real story. His body didn't decompose.
Wow.
Because he was clean.
Okay.
He was clean emotionally.
That's the difference. Okay. So it's like there was a different level of purification, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Different level.
Okay.
Right. And that's my goal. My goal is to unlock my spine. So I don't say I'm seeking enlightenment. I used to, but then I realized more. I learned, and with teachers and mentors, that any type of seeking is spiritual ego. So now it's not about that. It's about living in the present moment, feeling grateful and living in a state of grace. And then my goal through acupuncture and chiropractic and fruit helping me to clean is to unlock all the subluxations in my spine. And when that happens, there's that rush of energy from the tailbone to the pineal gland. And then that's when I don't believe in downloads. I don't think anything gets downloaded to you. I think that your energy, your toroidal field increases and you tap in. You're uploading.
Oh.
Because the information is already there in your COS. So you're not downloading anything. You're tapping in to the
Oh,
universe because it's already there.
right.
And then your brain is a receiver. So it's just receiving the signals. It's not downloading it, it's receiving signals, not a download. So when you go to speak, people are like, oh, I downloaded this. And I'm like, nah. I mean, it's okay. I'm not saying it's wrong or anything, but it's like, no, it's actually more even beautiful than that.
Wow. Wow. I love that depiction. I love that description and just that illustration that you give there, Brian, of tapping into the field, of consciousness, of just infinite, infinite information and that just that whole vibration because yeah, of course we've seen that people on all different sides of the globe were able to pick up on different types of consciousness at the very same time, and they cataloged about it, they wrote about it before the age of the internet, and they were able to come into these epiphanies or these realizations or forms of enlightenment in
Yeah.
that same consciousness, that same awareness, but in completely different sides of the earth. So yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah, exactly,
That's
Jerome.
amazing. So when it comes to the brain, just talking about the brain itself and how it still boggles the mind of so many people, and we're very perplexed about how it all works. I saw that you were talking about resequencing cranial nerves. And I remember boxing, I used to be heavy into boxing as well. I'd be in the gym, going at it, training and sparring in the ring with different people. And of course, we had headgear, but I took a lot of shots,
Yeah.
I took a lot of shots for sure. And I had to learn to protect myself at all times. But of course, I'm sure that my brain just being rocked around so many times that certain things happened, certain blunt force trauma. So if you can talk about the importance of resequencing cranial nerves and just can you break down like what we need to know about this?
Okay, so the program of life is to breathe. So the most important thing is to be able to breathe well so you can get oxygen to your prefrontal cortex. And if you can get the oxygen to the prefrontal cortex, the higher brain, that's how you tap into the field. Now, anytime a blow happens to the head, think of your house, and your house gets struck with lightning, but the house doesn't go on fire because it's got a grounding rod.
Okay.
So the electricity goes through the house and dissipates into the ground. But the electric circuits in the house, the lights go off because the circuit has to blow from the surge of energy. So the circuit breaks to stop the house from going on fire, right? So that's the same thing that happens when we get hit in the head. That's a fight or flight. One shot, the brain says, oh my God, it's a shock moment. And that shock moment, the brain has to do something to stop you from dying, to keep you going. So a circuit goes in the brain, but we don't have an ability to see that. We can't walk over and go doop, and switch it back on. So I'm a Lois Laney practitioner. I'm a restorative breathing coach. Lois has been teaching neurology for 40 years, and she's a pioneer and a godsend. She, I mean, she's not on the spectrum, but I would consider her to be almost a savant in terms of neurology because when she was 3 years old, she had puppies, and she noticed the runt of the litter wasn't able to do the same things to suckle and to get nourishment from the mom, and she started playing in the puppy's mouth. She started helping the puppy suckle on the mom. She was switched on from birth, and she was awake. So from that moment, she's always been interested in it. So for 50 years, she's had the experience of working with thousands of people, and she knows that the 12 cranial nerves are the circuits in your brain. They're the powerhouses. They run the show. And there's a certain sequence that they need to go through in order to make natural function happen naturally. So I have a free tool. I put it out online. Last year, or at the beginning of this year, I had taught a course. So it was a live course. And But now the stuff that I was teaching in the course, I actually put free online. So it's a free tool. So if people go on my posts, anywhere you see comment the word EBA, and you can get this free tool, and you'll get these brain activation exercises for free. Because, you know, like you, I can see that you're a very enlightened individual. I can see your aura. It's very bright. So I want to be able to share. I'm not trying to make money. We all have a job, right? We talk about this all the time. People are like, well, if people are so enlightened, they're charging money. Well, you have to make a living, right? So my platform is only $33 a month. And I have all of my breathing courses on there. So for only $33 a month, people can go on there, and I give the first 2 days away for free. And then I give this brain tool away for free, because I am trying to do as much as I can to give back to the collective, because that's the purpose of helping people, right? And then if people want to go on the platform, they can go on the platform if they want to work with me one-on-one. But the goal is to teach people how to activate the sensory cortex. So that would be like your right brain, right? Your left brain would be more motor coordinated. Your right brain would be more sensorial. So if we don't work on the sensory first, the motor will never be as good as it can be. Because if there's problems in the sensory, there's problems in the motor. So this tool awakens, it charges your brain on a daily basis, your sensory cortex. And then at the end of the tool, there's some motor programs. So when you do these activation exercises, they're in a very specific order. So they're resequencing the cranial nerves to breathe naturally at rest. So I've been teaching people how to breathe for 6 years now, but now that I've been in Lois's 12-month program, I realize you might not even need to practice breathing. You can. It isn't going to hurt you. It's still going to be beneficial. But I'm experiencing like profound things in my life just from activating my brain every day.
Right.
So I talk about cell voltage.
Okay.
And I have one video that recently, for the first time ever, I had a viral video, and it's up to 1.1 million views. No big deal. I sparked some controversy. And most of it was hate controversy.
Oh.
Yeah. So it went viral because people were like, look at this jerk. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Meanwhile, everything I was talking about, I already have 30 years of experience doing it. But I talked about cell voltage, and they're like, what are you talking about? You have no idea. You're a fool. Like, they were like, cell voltage. And I'm like, well, we're electromagnetic beings. Everything in the atom is 99.9% space. There are electrons that create a field of energy because you're in a field of energy.
Yes.
So there is such a thing as cell voltage. And the way you breathe can either create the right millivolts of the cells, which is, I think it's minus 50 and above for a cell to be healthy, for a cell to be in a state of perpetual existence without dying, without creating autophagy, right? And so when you have the right voltage in the cells, your body can either regenerate itself if it needs to, or it can continue to stay in a state of perpetual aliveness, right? Again, I'm 55, and I doubt that I'm going to be getting much older than I am now for a long, long time. Because I'm doing everything that I can on an experiential level. I'm a doer. So I do what I'm supposed to every day. So this tool, the best thing to do is to do it every single day. So I've now done it for 8 straight months, which is 240 days.
Awesome.
Why? Because 120 days is one neurological cycle. Within one neurological cycle, you can mature new red blood cells. And this is all on PubMed and research papers. So now I'm into my 120, So I'm into my third cycle,
Nice.
but and it takes 2 years for neuroplasticity to remodel the brain.
Okay.
So you are remodeling every day you do it,
Yeah.
but it takes 2 full years to really get that neuroplasticity to remodel your brain.
Wow.
And I know after 2 years, I'm not going to stop. Now, I haven't missed a day yet, but if I miss a day, it doesn't mean that everything stops. But when you continue to practice every day, it's like brushing your teeth. So now it's a very important part of my day. So I do it when I wake up. And when I'm done doing it, I'm like, no, I'm not like this. I'm like, I feel great.
Yeah.
If I may not have a good night of sleep, once you do these techniques, that goes away. The brain fog goes away because you stuck your finger in the light socket. You created this cell voltage,
Mm-hmm.
and now your brain is functioning the way God designed it. So what we're doing is we're teaching people how to organize and sequence these cranial nerves to function the way God designed it, which is the Buddha, which is Jesus, the enlightened masters, the masters that were living at a higher vibrational plane, Lahari Maheshai, Yogananda's guru, Sri Ramana Maharshi, right? You know, and Jerome, there are people in India who have never died. They're called sannyasi, like Babaji. Babaji is apparently like 2,000 years old. And there are people who live in the mountains of India and Tibet that can come in and out of our dimension, right? Carlos Castaneda talked about that in his books, A Separate Reality, with the Mexican Indian Don Juan.
Right.
So we are superhuman. Usually I wear a shirt that says superhuman.
Yeah.
So we have these superhuman potentials.
Yeah.
And it's not about being the Hulk or Superman. It's about, I love this ancient Chinese proverb. It's about, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Ooh.
So the warrior trains not to hurt somebody, but to be able to defend itself, because there's two branches of the autonomic nervous system: parasympathetic, which we're supposed to live in our entire lives at every moment without ever being sympathetically driven, ever. But when we need sympathetic, which is fight or flight, which is fight, flight, freeze, and fornicate, right?
Okay.
So the 4Fs. So if you think of a lion getting ready to stalk its prey, it's in the grass and it sees the antelope, and the antelope moves and the lion's got its foot up and it just stays there. But it's in a parasympathetic state waiting to activate its sympathetic response. And then you see the lion eating its prey, and what does it look like? The lions are like this. They got blood all over them. They look possessed, right? And then what do? They sleep all day because they have to digest that food. And the carnivores don't live very long lives. They live the shortest lives. The rhinoceroses are 40 years old. The elephants are 40 years old. The turtles are 100 years old. All the big animals are living these long, long lives, but the carnivores are not, because they're eating rotted, desiccated flesh, and that's why the carnivore has to eat its food within 15 minutes. They're not going to eat, and they eat the organs. They don't eat the flesh. They eat the organ meat, right? And people are like, oh, we evolved to eat meat. I'm like, show me a part of your body that can rip into a hide and eat flesh. Do you think you would take your mouth?
Yeah.
You think our ancient ancestors tackled an animal and then with our teeth bit into the animal through its carcass? No.
Yeah.
The only way we did that was because we had a higher brain from already having a higher brain from fruit, because fruit is the perfect neurochemistry of the brain. So we were in a state of higher consciousness, and then when the climate changed, we had to adapt. That's not evolution. In fact, that's devolution of the species, because God did not put creatures here to be killed. And I have another very profound thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Hollyweird, they tell you things in movies.
Mm-hmm.
And Stanley Kubrick directed 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1967. And the first scene of the movie tells you how we fell from grace. But I don't want to ruin it for people.
Okay.
I want them to be able to figure it out. So in this movie, you'll see the scene of monkeys at a watering hole, and then you'll see what happens afterwards.
Okay.
It's a very important scene in cinematic history to watch.
Very
We
interesting.
we weren't put here to have dominion over the other sentient beings. We were given dominion to protect the world, to honor the
Wow.
earth. That's what dominion meant.
Wow.
Not that everything is our playground and our food source. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. You know, as you're speaking, Bryan, you know, I'm getting so many visions, so many pictures, like just with your descriptions, you give a lot of clarity to these things that, you know, are talked about, but you're talking about it in a different and unique way. And even when you speak about dominion, you know, two of the movies or the documentaries that changed my life the most were Earthlings, and another one was actually called Dominion,
Oh,
you know?
I have to write that down.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if
I
anybody has
should
seen
write that
it,
down.
usually Earthlings is enough for people, but Dominion is even worse. And I mean, when they just behind the scenes of the slaughterhouses and the things that go on behind closed doors, and just, I mean, it's just crazy. And they even the editors of the videos said that there were actually scenes that they couldn't even put in the documentary, and the documentary is pretty graphic. It's pretty bad.
Oh, I
So
don't know if I could watch it.
yeah, it's hard to watch. You know, for me, growing up eating, you know, everything, my family still eats everything. It was it was really tough for me to watch. I got very emotional, and I felt like a whole identity crisis. It was like it
Yeah.
was part of myself that felt false. It just felt like such a falsity in my life, and just like I was just living a lie for so many years, unknowingly, just unconsciously
Yeah.
eating things that were not natural for my system.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, when you were talking about sleeping patterns and getting better rest and getting better sleep, I grew up battling just so many problems when it came to falling asleep during the day, having supreme amounts of lethargy, just feeling like I had narcolepsy, feeling like, you know, what was going on. And then they hooked up nodes to my brain and did sleep studies. And, you know, they said I had sleep apnea. Then they said I had a deviated nasal septum. Then they put me on a CPAP machine like Darth Vader. It was breathing for me at night, you know. You know, I was Darth Vader at night. And then they did a surgery, corrected the nasal septum, and I still was having the same troubles. But I feel like a lot of it contributed because my breath was being obstructed and my body was being abducted, you know, like from a lot of the things that I was
Yeah.
consuming and putting in my body that wasn't allowing me to breathe properly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
So,
Amazing.
so
But you
thank you.
know, you and I have remembered who we truly are, and that's what we're here to do,
Yeah.
right? And now, because the world is in such a beautiful position, we also see all the treachery and the depravity.
Hmm.
But we're in a beautiful position because the energies that are coming into the planet are actually causing the darkness to be brought to the light.
Hmm.
So it looks like the world is falling apart, but it's not. It's being
Hmm.
rebuilt.
Hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. I like to keep a positive outlook. You know, I think there was a quote by Osho that said, be realistic, expect a miracle. You know, like
Wow.
that's realism, you know, expect it. Expect a miracle, be realistic,
Yes.
you know. Some people think, you know, to expect the worst is like I'm a realist, you know, I'm being a realist, but I think it's the other way around, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I think people in the chat are really enjoying this. That's nice.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we're getting a lot of love from people in the chat. And as well, when you were talking, Bryan, about adrenal fatigue, I went through these things as well when it came to just being under the programming of thinking that I needed all sorts of Red Bulls and Monsters and Rock Stars and energy drinks and even Adderall at one point. I was just to stay on my feet and go to jobs that I hated. And, you know, I just was tearing up my nervous system. And I can only imagine what my adrenals were looking like in that state. But what do you feel like when it comes to caffeine? People really don't understand or realize what it is actually doing to their nervous system, like to their body as a whole. When we see the lines, you know, backed up on the end of the street at Starbucks with everybody just going to get their
Yeah.
cup every day. You know?
Yeah, so 7 years ago, this coming Halloween, I gave up coffee,
Okay.
and I had drank it for
Hmm.
37 years.
Hmm.
Um, but I read, 7 years ago, I read a book called The Coffee Deception.
Hmm.
And I had been trying to get off of it, but it was impossible,
Okay.
right? Because it's that comfort, it's that stimulation that I didn't realize I was being stimulated,
Hmm.
that I was addicted to that, because my whole life was being
Hmm.
stimulated.
Hmm.
So when you're acidic, you crave acidity. So when you drink coffee, which is battery acid, and you put the battery acid the first thing in the morning, you're dehydrating
Yeah.
yourself. And now your gut pH is much more acidic than it should be. So you're going to crave an acidic lifestyle, crazy relationships, adrenaline seeking, you know, carnivorism, whatever it is, you're going to manifest that into your life because it's a reflection of how your gut, your pH of your body is.
Hmm.
So 7 years ago, I gave it up, and I think I had 1 cup of coffee last year. It's been a year, and I was in Sicily. So I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I could try. And I had 1 cup of coffee, and it killed me. I couldn't believe how bad I felt. 30 minutes later, I was like this. What the hell is going on? I felt nauseous and dizzy.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. This is how I felt all the time, and I didn't know it
Yeah.
because it's a drug. So you get adapted to it.
Okay.
So you think, oh, it makes me feel good. I need it. It makes me feel good. But you don't realize how bad it's hurting you.
Right.
So as soon as I had that 1 cup, I said, never again.
Jeez.
And even if I have green tea, because sometimes I will have green tea, but not often. But I still feel the buzz. And I'm like, you know, I don't need that buzz.
Hmm.
I don't need to feel that stimulation because stimulation comes from your breathing.
Okay.
If you're breathing perfectly at rest, which is autonomic breathing, you are stimulated by the sensorial information that's coming into your field. And in New York City, there's too much of it. And in most places, there's too much of it.
Hmm.
Like I even hear people tell me in Costa Rica that everyone's going down there now and it's getting to be too much. And that's what happens, right? Humans start to flock someplace and then all of a sudden it's not as tranquil as it used to be.
Right.
But when I go outside, I put my armor of God on.
Hmm.
I do it every day. After I'm done with my brain activations, I put the armor of God on. I put that energy field around my energy field. And then when I'm walking through people, I used to be the guy that walked through you. If you didn't want to move, I wasn't going to move. But now I'm like, zip, 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 zip. I zigzag in and out of people because I'm spry. And I'm like, I don't need to make myself feel angry because they're looking down. All I have to do is get out of the way.
Hmm.
I don't have to be the person who stands his ground. So I just move out of the way and I'll walk on the side between the sidewalk and the street. And I'll just make sure that I have a clear path. I have my mouth closed. My tongue is on the roof of my mouth. I'm in a neurologically safe place. And if something comes into my field, what Lois has taught us is that it's very important. You could use this on your own. Everyone out there who's listening is you can enact a safety statement. So let's say you get into just a small little run-in with somebody who gives you a dirty look because you didn't get out of their way. You could say, in this moment and every moment, I feel safe when somebody crosses me. In this moment and every moment, I feel safe knowing that that has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
In this moment and every moment, I feel guided and protected by the universe, right? And as long as you say that to you, you rewire your brain You go back into that parasympathetic state, and then you don't take on that energy dagger that somebody unknowingly to them did to you.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. You know, I've had all the addictions, Jerome. I was a sex addict too, all through my 20s and 30s.
Okay.
And then if I walked down the streets in New York City and I looked at a woman, I was already fantasizing, right? And now it's on another level. I realize that those are spiritual daggers. That when I don't, but if I was going to think that, I'm actually throwing negative energy at this person who doesn't know me,
Right.
who doesn't want that, right? So now you can look at somebody, even including a man, and think, oh, they're nice looking. A woman is nice looking, but I don't have those thoughts like I used to anymore. It's like you perceive the world around you. You can have a thought, but you don't act on it. And your thoughts are also, you know, creating how you think, act, and feel. So I consider that to be one of the most massive changes I've ever experienced, is not utilizing my or losing my seed,
Right.
nor do I masturbate. I gave that up a long time ago too, because what am I going to do that to? What kind of thoughts am I having?
Right.
Those thoughts are not serving me, so I don't partake in it.
Right. So with the lustful energy, because I mean, so many, men today battle with that. I mean, it's become like a buzzword now, where you're talking about semen retention, no fap, just the sexual energy transmutation. So to have that, different direction, to not have the depletion of the secretions, as it were,
Nice.
to have that energy be redirected, what do you feel like you redirect that energy? Because if it's just energy, it's not created or destroyed, it's just transformed. Now, where do you feel like you guide that energy that used to go to the feminine? Where do you
Yeah.
guide it more towards today?
Learning about the cranial nerves as much as I can, focusing on breathing, paying attention to how I feel in the moment, and just trying to live in a state of grace. So if my thoughts aren't, like, if I have thoughts that don't serve me, I say to myself, those are not your thoughts, right? And you can have a bad thought. Doesn't mean you have to act on it,
Right.
right? You can have a bad thought without hurting yourself karmically, because as long as you don't act on it. But hopefully those the bad thought might be like, wanting to eat pizza, because I grew up Italian, and the thing I miss most is pizza. Vegan pizzas don't do it for me, because no matter how good it is, I always say it's not real pizza. So I would consider that, I have a lot of thoughts all day long about foods that I don't eat and won't eat, but yet they permeate my brain.
Yeah.
Because you walk around New York City and there's pizzerias everywhere, and you could smell it, and it makes me think about it.
Right.
So I try to, at that moment, that's how I read that. I guess that's a pretty good thing, right? That's about as bad as it gets for me. So in those moments, I say to myself, those are not your thoughts. Redirect your energy. And I might actually look at a building and say, oh, that's a really great looking building. Or I try to find a tree. I try to find something that's actually pleasing to me, that makes me feel good and safe. Because in what I teach, you actually have to have a focal point.
Okay.
And that focal point has to be your favorite color, your favorite picture, something that makes you feel good, right? And you keep your gaze on that focal point, because your optic nerve, has 11 million of the 12 million neurons that run your autonomic nervous system. So what you see, what you do, that lustful energy, all of that stuff is being inputted in your brain. So when you may have a thought that doesn't serve you, you can redirect your energy with your eyes to something that changes your state of mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is so important. These are such great things to know. Like, thank you for this communication of just abundance of information, because you're bringing me down memory lane when I was in Italy, when I took a trip, I was in there for like 2 months, I just traveled and just went to different locations, but I wasn't eating anything. And it was so ironic because when I grew up, when I was younger, I had all of the things, you know, like the Alfredos, the linguinis, the fettuccinis, the
Yeah.
angel hair, and just everything in abundance. But I never had the real thing in Italy. So when I actually went to Italy, it was after I, you know, started on liquids and I started fasting and all of that other stuff. So I wasn't even partaking of any of the restaurants. I never had to
Wow.
go in any of them. Yeah, so it's a
Wow.
very interesting
Wow.
experience. Yeah,
That's amazing. It's not easy to break the programs,
right.
right? And there's so many negative programs like alcohol. You know, I drank from the moment I was 13 till I was 50.
Mm,
Or I really stopped at around 47, but it would be few and far between. And now I don't drink alcohol. And if you look at the etymology of alcohol, it's al ghul.
mm,
That's why they call it wines and spirits.
mm.
So you can, I know plenty of people, you can still be a beautiful person and drink, but the drinking is killing you. So
Yeah,
there's a there's an entity attached to it
yeah,
that's siphoning your energy, whether or not, you know, and there's many bad drunks, whether or not they're mean or not, it's still siphoning their own energy and it's destroying their body.
yeah. Even that etymology, which you described, Al Ghul. Like I was just thinking of Ra's Al Ghul. That's like one of Batman's greatest villains. You know,
Oh,
Ra's
yes.
Al Ghul. He's
Yes.
yeah, just the play on words there, where you know he's like a zombie coming back to life in the Lazarus pit, and he just you know wreaks havoc. You know, so
Mm.
there's so many things that we could unpack. I mean, I think we could do two more of these lives and still be scratching the surface with all that you've given us today, Bryan. But I just want to thank you for your time. Like, just thank you for these messages. I know you have meetings right after this, so I want to respect you for that.
Thank you.
But just right before you go, would you let the viewers and people who are listening know where they can grab your services, where they can receive your offerings, and just the best place that they can tune into you?
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you for having me today, and to all the people who have been watching, because you're all on that level. You know, not, I don't mean that on our level, but the level of grace.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you to everybody out there. Um, well, my link tree and my Instagram tells how people can communicate with me. I do offer 30-minute consultations, but I must say that it is for serious people who actually want change. I can't just talk to people for 30 minutes about telling them how to eat and stuff like that. It's really more on whether or not they want to work together on, you know, making a better self.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, like I said, my platform is only $33 a month. The first 2 days are free.
Yeah.
You can sign up. I have a nutrition program on there, so you can look at it, and then you can get off it if you want. And then I work with people one-on-one. My website is quantumfitness.org. And that's it. Those are the only two places.
Awesome. Quantumfitness.org, link tree in the bio, 33 for the website, and consultations for serious people. Serious.
Yeah, and in that website, in the platform, I have a 6-month program that takes you from novice breather all the way to a master breather. So, you know, I used to, when I was working one-on-one, I was, you know, charging a lot of money for it. But now for 6 months, it only costs you $190 to learn how to breathe, you know, from a master instructor. So again, I doing that because as I get better at things, I can streamline them and it brings it more to the people.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather have 1 million people than 10 people who pay me $5,000. So.
So valuable. So valuable. So blessings to you, Bryan. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you,
just
Jerome.
enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Peace and love. Have the day you deserve.
Peace and love.